Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. Amateur Traveler, episode 99. Today the Amateur Traveler goes to Malaysia.
I got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there, and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo. 15-hour flight, I don't think I'll ever be coming home. You know I love it. I got to see one more cathedral. I got to sit in one more cafe. I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. The first piece of news that I have for you today is to announce the winners of the second anniversary contest. That contest, as you may remember, is to identify the 8 images which are used in the Amateur Traveler logo, which appears on the website as well as elsewhere, like in iTunes. And I have a tie for first place, and both the people who tied for first place have been members of the Amateur Traveler community and have been active on the discussion board since the very beginning, and they both got 7 out of 8 correct. And the first one is actually Daniel Perez, who was our guest last week on the show talking about Belgium and the Netherlands. And the second one is Wes, also known as Adias Orange on the discussion boards. And the correct answers, if you're looking at a copy of the logo, the upper left-hand corner, going from left to right, are Venice. That's a picture of St. Mark's Square. Bodie State Park in California, which is a ghost town. Nantucket, Massachusetts. This was mentioned in an episode about great bike trips. Number 4 is Madrid. That's Plaza Mayor in Madrid. Number 5 is Bermuda. Number 6 is London, and that's one that was going to be obscure, and I wasn't sure that anyone would get that, and both Daniel and Wes got that one. But it turns out that I didn't realize how many of these pictures were actually listed in episode 13 about travel photography, where I used my own photography. Many of these images showed up in that, and so in fact, that one was labeled there as a picture from London. Number 7, I hope you all got, although many of you may have thought that that was Big Ben in London. That is not. That is the Parliamentary Clock Tower in London. Big Ben is the name of the largest bell which tolls the hour. And number 8 is Bryce National Park in Utah. Thanks to everyone who sent in entries, and for both Daniel and Wes, send me an email with which travel poster you would like and where to send it. And congratulations and thanks for your long participation in the community. And then it may not have made your week, but it certainly made mine. The show, The Amateur Traveler, has been nominated for a podcast award. Like getting voted for Homecoming Queen, this is largely a popularity contest, and it is based on the number of votes you get. And if you'd like to support the show and vote for it, you can go to podcastawards.com between July 28th and August 11th and vote for the show. I believe you can even vote daily if you're so inclined, and that'd be great. It would let more people know about the show if it did win an award. And while you're there, look at the other podcasts and see if there's any of your favorites there and give them a vote as well. And since there's always the possibility that you actually came here to listen about travel, I have a couple travel stories for you. The first one is the start of a story, and that is that Southwest has announced that it is unveiling a new boarding/seating method in the fourth quarter of this year. No details yet available in terms of what that will be. It might be spin the big wheel to determine where you're going to be seating. We just don't know yet. And then lastly comes a story that could make you swear off travel altogether. According to the World Health Organization, they're recommending that passengers on long flights exercise their legs and resist taking sleeping pills to reduce the risk of potentially fatal blood clots. In case you haven't heard about DVT, or deep vein thrombosis, in some cases, thought to be rare, blood clots can develop on a flight of over 4 hours or long, especially if you're not exercising your legs. The thought to be rare part is, according to WHO, World Health Organization, the odds have been calculated as being 1 in 6,000 for flights of 4 hours or more. That translates into 1 passenger per 15 fully loaded B747s. I was sort of hoping those odds would be higher than that. So check out that story in the show notes at amateurtraveler.com. I'd like to welcome to the show Will, who's come to talk to us about a recent trip to Malaysia. Will, welcome to the show.
Hey there.
So why did you end up going to Malaysia? That's, I don't think, on everybody's travel itinerary.
I mean, there's something somewhere different. It's a little off the beaten path. I mean, a lot of people, they go to Southeast Asia and they think Thailand and all the beaches in Thailand. So something a little different, something for a change.
Having never gone to Malaysia nor planned a trip to Malaysia, where did you spend your time there? Were you in the city? Were you out in the hinterlands? Or
I probably spent most of my time in the smaller villages. I was traveling up the East Coast and back down through the center. Yeah, I spent most of my time in small fishing villages, and I ended up in KL once, a few other towns, Kuantan, but I tried to keep out of the main metropolises.
I noticed in your pictures they had a lot of pictures from the small fishing villages, and we'll include a links to your gallery, but I'll let you plug it here right now before we get too much into the show.
Okay, at perspective-images.com. It's basically a travel and photography blog. There's pictures from Asia and from, United States and around the world.
So, did you have an itinerary as you headed over there, or were you just on a walkabout, as it were? Or?
Yeah, walkabout, plan it by ear. I knew roughly where I was going. I knew I was traveling up the East Coast, but where I was actually stopping, that was on a day-to-day basis. Wherever the bus let me off, basically.
Okay, so you're just getting around by public transportation?
Yep.
What are some of the highlights of the trip? What things stand out for you?
Well, like I mentioned before, probably the fishing villages. They were my main sort of targets. I wanted to get some of the really colourful, bright fishing boats that they use out there, and the beaches. People who go to Malaysia, they generally want to go for the beaches. Princian Islands, they were pretty spectacular.
Tell us a little more about that.
Well, I was there in the quiet time,
Mm-hmm.
just before the mad rush comes, just after the monsoons. So it was quiet, it was peaceful. I've been told that, when it gets into, a couple of months later, probably around June, July, so it turns into a big beach scene. But it was very, very peaceful. The waters are crystal clear and blue, and the skies and beautiful sunsets every night. It's photographer's heaven, really.
Obviously, as a photographer, it looks like you went to take pictures. You talked about taking pictures of the fishing boats and such. Any particular photograph that you took that you think just really captured Malaysia for you?
Well, there's different parts of Malaysia. You have the coastal scene, the fishing villages. Then if you go through the center, you go through Taman Negara, the national rainforest. I was in the rainforest and I was hiking up a trail. I was at 95% humidity. It was like hitting a wall of water, and I just had enough for the day. And I tried to catch a lift back on one of the river taxis, little boats going down the river. So I picked up this boat, and they were stopping at a local, the Orang Asli, the indigenous inhabitants of Malaysia. They were stopping at one of their villages. So I stopped there for a couple of hours with these guys, and they were the defining pictures of Malaysia for me. Good, honest portraits. They were really good pictures. I was really happy with that, and it was completely by chance that I got them as well. So.
Can you describe the village?
They live very primitively, extremely primitively. They still hunt in the forest. They use blowpipes. They travel around. They live in basically bamboo huts that they build in locations where they're staying.
I didn't expect that there would still be indigenous people, I guess, in Malaysia, or that many. I just didn't realize that.
They're the last tribe on the peninsula of Malaysia. I mean, it's out Borneo, Malaysia. I think there's still a few. The peninsula of Malaysia, they're the last.
Any other highlights for you from Malaysia?
KL was interesting. It wasn't a place I had originally planned on stopping, but that was a last-minute side trip, really. But that's an experience. It's a real pressure cooker environment. It's super busy, super bustling. Maybe it just felt more that way since I'd been in the smaller towns and villages beforehand, but it was an experience as well.
Anything stand out, memorable from going to this big city?
Chinatown. Some of the markets in Chinatown, there was these enclosed markets, and they're just like, they just feel really close and oppressing, and it's a very eerie experience. Everyone's bustling around, everyone's doing their thing, and big city goings on, really.
Now, Malaysia seems like one of those very remote places. Were there moments that you felt the furthest from home?
Probably the very first night that I got there. I got off the bus in the town of Kuantan. I had to find a hotel, find a hostel, and there was a night market going on. That was the only time that I felt like really sort of isolated and alone walking through this night market. And everybody's curious about you, but not everyone in these towns speaks English. Nobody knew how to communicate, and my Malay at that point wasn't that great. They just felt really, really strange. But after you get over that, then things hit a routine, hit a groove, and it was good.
And as they're curious about you, are they shy? Are they crowding all around you? What's the way they deal with strangers in Malaysia?
People can speak a couple of words of English. Only, even if they just speak a couple, they want to talk to you.
Okay.
Everybody, they want to know where you're from, where you're going, how your trip's going. Yeah, everybody just wants to talk. There's no shyness. Everything's just really open. I had to catch a taxi one day. It turned out this taxi driver, he was a part-time taxi driver, the rest of the time he was a police officer. And he ended up taking me out for dinner. And because he just wanted to talk to me. It's like, okay, yeah, this is great. And he took me to another market that was well off the beaten track. It was just all locals, and that was fun. That was great fun.
And what is Malay food? You went out to dinner with him, and the Malay food is similar to other food in Southeast Asia?
I guess there might be some similarities to Indonesian, maybe because of the language. It's very similar. Bahasa Malay and Indonesia, it's very similar. I guess it's similar to other Southeast Asian food. There's a lot of fish used in the recipes. But then again, Thailand's just across the border, and I don't know, to me, it seems like it's light years away from Thai food. I mean, they're just so different, both great in their own respects, but...
What is sort of the
very different.
typical Malay dish, then? Fish, it sounds like.
Yeah, rice and noodles. Breakfast would be like nasi lemak, like a rice cooked in coconut milk, or a roti canai, which is basically sort of a flatbread pancake with a curry sauce.
Mm-hmm.
And other meals would be like a mee goreng, fried noodles, or nasi goreng, fried rice, and curries. I mean, there's a lot of Indian influence in some Malay food, so curries feature a little bit.
Okay. You said that a lot of people speak a few words of English. When you can only speak a few words of English, what are the first words that people learn in English?
Probably the same words that you learn in Malay. How are you?
Okay.
Where are you from? Yeah.
And how do you say that in Malay?
How are you?
Uh-huh.
Apa khabar?
Apa khabar?
Yeah, and the usual response is khabar baik. But I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, but I think learning the food, learning the words for the food, they're the important ones too.
Because then you won't starve.
Yeah.
Now, how much preparation did you do for the trip? Did you use a lot of guidebooks as you were preparing for the trip, or internet sites, or?
I bought a copy of Lonely Planet, Southeast Asia on a Shoestring. That was it.
What did you find that the guide recommended that was a little disappointing for you? Did you find things that you didn't quite agree with their assessment?
I only used it really as a very rough guide. I didn't follow the literal path.
You lived out of the bus schedule more than the guidebook?
Yeah, I mean, it depends when the bus was coming by, more than fixing timescales, times where I was going to be places and that. Like I say, going to KL, I didn't expect to be going there, but I ended up there anyway, so...
So when you're traveling with less of a rigid itinerary, like it sounds like you were, what was the biggest surprise that happened on the trip?
What did surprise me was the public transportation. It was good. It was really good. Here in the States, well, where we live especially, we don't have that much of buses or any public transportation. But out there, I mean, you could just stick your thumb out and you would end up catching a bus going in hopefully the right direction. That really surprised me. I thought they were really good and they were cheap.
When you say cheap, how expensive is it? Obviously, the airfare is going to be expensive to get there, but how expensive is it to get around or to stay?
Getting around, traveling from north to south, if you're traveling from straight to the top to the bottom, I'm not sure how much that would cost in one go, because my trip was broken up, traveling half a day to a place, stopping, then traveling a few more hours to another place, and stopping. It seemed to me relatively inexpensive, maybe like the equivalent of 30 to 50 cents to travel like 3 hours maybe.
Oh, okay.
I didn't budget really that well my traveling. I can say it was pretty cheap though.
Of all the things that you saw, top 3 that stand out. If somebody's going to Malaysia, these are the 3 things that they shouldn't miss.
Perhentian Islands, definitely. I think they're pretty famous. What you've got to do is Google them and you'll get a number of websites.
And we're going out there to swim, to snorkel, to just hang out. What do we do there? For those of us who don't want to Google and interrupt the phone conversation.
Diving and snorkeling, they're really big. You can actually get your PADI license out there if you want to, and it's cheaper than Australia or the States to get your license. Hanging out on the beach, just mixing with people. So you can do some jungle treks going across the hills there.
Okay.
They're probably the main things that people go out there for. And getting a suntan, I mean.
Sure, yeah. From the pictures you had of some of the beaches, it also looked like a pretty good place to go to just get away.
Get a book and sit on the beach.
Yeah. Okay, so that's your number 1.
KL for the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's Chinese, Malaysian, and Indian all combined in a really tight environment. That's worth seeing.
Any particular sites in KL? You mentioned the Chinatown.
So I was actually hanging out with some friends there, some Malaysian friends. So I didn't see that many of, I suppose, the regular tourist attractions. I ended up in night markets and food markets.
I consider those great places to go, yeah.
Yeah. And I can't even tell you where they were. I was driven around in a car. So.
Okay. Now, you talk about the food markets. A lot of people have a little uneasiness when they think about sort of street food in places like Malaysia. You were eating everything that was offered to you, or at least everything you recognized, or?
There's a night market in Kota Baru in the very north. It's near the Thai border. You just walked into this market at night time, and there's just food stalls everywhere. And it was the best food, the best curries, the best everything that you can get there. I basically, everywhere I went, I just ate everything, and I never had a problem. It was only till I got to KL, which was towards the end of my trip, that I just stopped at a couple of just small hole-in-the-wall, little Indian places.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the only time that I had any problems with the food. I think you can eat anywhere, and it's fine. If you don't know what it is and you order it, I mean, I guess you don't like it, just don't get it again. But, I mean, everything is different, so it's an experience. So.
How long was your whole trip?
About 3 weeks.
Okay. And then side trips. You go to Malaysia. You actually did a couple other stops while you were in the area.
Singapore is probably the easiest and most obvious one. It's
sure.
From JB, it's just walk across the bridge into Singapore. That's a really good little side trip. It's a lot more expensive, but it's good to see, definitely.
What is the contrast between Malaysia and Singapore?
Singapore has a lot more money. There's a lot more infrastructure, and it's culturally, there's a lot of Chinese influence in Singapore. So the variety of food in Singapore is a lot different. You can, I think, as Lonely Planet puts it, you can throw a chopstick up in the air and it's bound to land in something edible. Everything. The food there is great. You can just walk around all day eating. It's great fun. And there are still good cultural aspects to it. Some good temples, Hindu temples. There's good photography there still.
Mm-hmm.
I like Singapore.
Well, is there anything else that people should know if we're going to head to that part of the world?
Nah, I think we've pretty much covered it. Just take the local buses and just talk to everyone. That's the thing. And you'll end up having a whale of a time.
As you're trying to connect with the locals who speak just, a little English sometimes, did you do any tricks? Did you bring photos from home or postcards or anything that helped facilitate the communication?
I actually, when I was living in New York City, I used to work in a restaurant that was run by Malays. So my Malay wasn't too bad. I could speak to people a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think just being yourself is probably the biggest aspect of it, and just talking to them. And anyone, I think, appreciates that.
Well, great. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate you sharing more about your trip to Malaysia.
Yeah, no worries. Great to be here.
Thanks very much. I would remind people that since Will is a photographer, I have been using his pictures predominantly in the enhanced version of his show, which has pictures and links. If you don't know about the enhanced version of the show, it's for those people who are using iTunes or who are using newer iPods also. And so check that out. Information about how to subscribe to that is on the show notes at amateurtraveler.com, or drop me an email if you have any questions at host@amateurtraveler.com. The first internet resource I have for you today is a familiar one, and it's Google Maps, maps.google.com if you haven't used it. One of the new features that just recently got added to that particular product, which we used for our recent trip to Europe, is the ability to take the route that they are proposing and then drag a point on that route to a different route. So, for instance, we were planning on going from Switzerland to France, and it told us the fastest route was through Milan, but we decided we wanted to stop and see somebody for lunch near Lake Luzerne in Switzerland, and so we just dragged a point to Lake Luzerne, and it rerouted that whole route for us. So, a very interesting feature. Check that out, maps.google.com. The second internet resource I have for you is Like a Local, like-a-local.com. And this site will put you in touch with a local who lives at the place you're going. You can live with them, live in unique places from a houseboat in Amsterdam to a loft in Barcelona, go with them, meet a local and be surprised by their secret addresses in the location, or eat with them, dine with a local at their home, taste and experience the local atmosphere. So if you're looking for something more than a tourist experience, this might be an interesting site for you. In the community section, for those of you interested in learning how to use your camera better, our old friend Chris Marquardt, who's been a guest on the show before, is coming to the U.S. to do a series of 4 workshops on using your camera at Fort Collins, Colorado, San Diego, California, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Port Lucie, Florida. So check out links to that in the show notes at amateurtraveler.com. In the Oops, I Got It Wrong category would be a letter I got from Maurice this week. Maurice is from Delft in the Netherlands, a longtime listener and a longtime traveler. He just got back from Paris and Barcelona, and he hadn't had a chance to listen to the show yet on Delft, which was last week's show, but he did notice that I spelled the word Kirk with an I instead of an E. I believe I would be how you'd spell it in German, and I've studied German and not Dutch, so my apologies there, Maurice. I also got a letter from Sherry, and Sherry said, Chris, I want to say that your podcast is wonderful. And that's always a good way to get me to read your letter, to start that way. I've been traveling around the world for 10 months, 4 more to go, and I have been an avid listener of your podcast. It's full of useful information, and it keeps me connected to the world of travel. I'm a solo female traveler. I quit my corporate job 10 months ago and left New York City to see the world, a mini retirement of sorts. I've since traveled to Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, Hong Kong, New Zealand, Australia, Bali, Borneo, Lombok, Singapore, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Greece, Italy, Croatia, Montenegro, and I'm currently in Morocco. I just rode camels through the Sahara and camped in the desert. Truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I head to Egypt, Geneva, India, and back to Asia over the next 4 months. It's been a crazy trip, and there have been many adventures. I use your podcast to entertain me when I'm on buses, planes, or camping to drown out the noise of roosters. That's a first. I'm not sure how you decide upon your topics, but if you ever need info on any of these countries and what it's like to travel around the world, as a former corporate executive in her mid-30s, I have plenty to share. Going from New York City to sleeping in hostels was quite a shock at 37 years old. I'm doing a mixture of hostels, mid-range hotels, and tour companies, which provides a nice variety and an ability to meet lots of fellow travelers. Every time I decide on a destination, I go to look at your podcast to see if you have any info in the area. Keep up the great work. Know there are people all over the world listening. I've added your site to the link on my blog, hopefully turning many others onto your great resource that you put together. Thanks very much, Sherry. Sherry included a link to her site, which is ottsworld.com, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. It's always great to hear from people, and to hear from people traveling is a double bonus. Sherry, why don't you send me another email, or I'll write back to you. Probably, I'm thinking, as your trip winds down, maybe we should have you on the show and talk about what it's like to be a single solo female traveler. We have not done anything on that, so with that, we will wind the show to a close. Don't forget to go and vote for the show at the Podcast Awards if you're so inclined. If you're not inclined, we can still be friends. Feel free to contact me at host@amateurtraveler.com or look at many of the other ways to contact me at amateurtraveler.com/contact. And as always, thanks so much for listening.
I got to see one more cathedral. I got to sit in one more cafe. I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
The best and the brightest served up daily by the sharpest minds in content delivery, pod show, and limelight.